All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Supply Chaney podcast. I am your host, Nathan Chaney, and today we're going to talk about warehouse management systems and maybe a little bit about consulting and 3PL and fulfillment and kind of a lot of the things that go within a four walls of a warehouse. And today, to talk about that, we have Randall Guernsey, who is Mr. Fulfillment himself, currently hanging out with the guys at ShipHero as their head of professional services, and also someone you can hang out with here pretty soon in Las Vegas at their upcoming AI and Logistics Summit. So, without further ado, Randall, let the folks know a little bit more about who you are, and if they hadn't heard of ShipHero, a little bit more about ShipHero.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you first and foremost for having me on. It's always a
Certainly.
pleasure to be involved with these things. But I'm a fulfillment guy through and through, right? I've been in this business for about 20 years. So I've been doing fulfillment when Amazon was still a bookstore and eBay was kind of that new platform where you could actually buy and sell things online. So I've seen virtually all renditions that have evolved over the years, from direct consumer fulfillment, e-com fulfillment, B2B, anything and everything about that. And really the core functions of creating a successful 3PL, which was my neck of the woods, is having the right systems and platforms in place to really sustain good operations, consistent output, quality, accurate inventory. Everything that you need to run a good warehouse really comes from these systems and processes that you're able to put in place as a good operator. And that's kind of where I stumbled across ShipHero. Is when I was looking and growing my own 3PL, I needed a better platform. Like a lot of people in the space, I was just using ShipStation as a label generator to be able to print shipping labels for UPS, FedEx, USPS, but it really did not have all the bells and whistles that you need to run a good warehouse operation. So throughout my search is where I found ShipHero WMS, and immediately it checked all of the boxes of proper inventory control and management from the inbound and receiving side, replenishment and put away, all the way through the picking, the packing, and shipping. And it's only evolved since then and gotten better year after year. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of their team at this point, and continuing to look forward to see what we have up next.
Nice, nice. Thanks for that quick intro. I do want to talk more and unpack, if you will, a little bit more about what's going
I see what
on
you did
at
there.
ShipHero. You saw that, huh? Every now and then you got to get the dad joke in there. So, but let's talk a little bit more about your more formative years. One thing on the podcast that I try to uncover is the human person story that goes on behind the people that we hear about and see on LinkedIn or at conferences and trade shows. So kind of like, pull out the yearbook or the photo album a bit and kind of walk us through the early years for Randall and Mr. Fulfillment.
Yeah, so it's my history goes back a little ways, but like I said, I've been in this business for about 20 years, and it was actually because of my brother that got me into this space. I was originally going to school for aviation. So one little thing about me that not a lot of people know is that I actually did get my pilot's license. So I am a private pilot. I was planning on going through that route as a career choice, but he had just started his own 3PL and fulfillment company, needed some help with it. And back in those days, this was still post 9/11. The aviation industry was not fully recovered at that point, and it was just uncertain of whether or not that would be a good career choice. So I made the decision to go work with him in my parents' basement, is where he started his company. Just picking orders, shipping orders. And back then we were doing a lot of the um, as seen on TV type products, the digital marketing content, CD and DVD products, to show people really how to set up an eBay store to buy and sell products. So, as that business really started to grow, is where I just got a lot of firsthand experience of doing everything behind the operations. I mean, being his brother, he just, hey, if something needs to get done, he was going out to a conference and needed the warehouse to run. I was the guy doing it. Everything from invoicing and accounting to data processing, loading up our van and taking that over to the post office. I was doing a little bit of everything. So very much, dove in head first to try and learn as much as I could, absorb as much as I could. And as that business continued to grow, is when I started taking on more of the management responsibilities to build out our operations team, to build out our sales and marketing team, and really gained firsthand experience of how to effectively run a good operation.
So you are literally that story of a fulfillment operation that started in their basement slash garage then.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's really, really
No
cool.
shame, man. We all got to start somewhere.
No, and I think that anyone who can ever say, I've driven to the post office to drop off boxes and orders and shipments, then it's like that's how you check the box and you just know, okay, this person knows what's up, right? And so,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
we didn't bring on any investors, like we started our businesses just with credit card debt, and the cash that was in our bank accounts. And that's how we had to bootstrap the whole thing. So you got to be scrappy. You got to learn to run a lean operation since you aren't making a whole lot of money. And yeah, warehouses are almost always smoke and mirrors, right? You got your four walls, but we didn't need a class A 40-foot warehouse building at the time. We just needed somewhere to put some inventory and get the orders out the door.
yeah, the number of people I think that like just rent a storage unit, like a 20 by 20 storage unit and turn that into like their first warehouse, you can hack. And I think that's what I'm seeing is like the barriers to entry to being a fulfillment business and stuff these days are just so low. And especially if you're like catering to people that are just cell phone cases and like just
Yeah.
real small stuff, you don't need a lot of space and you can like get your foot in the door. But let's talk a little bit about like, in those years when you were studying aviation science and whatnot, can you just talk about like what it's been like, just from a personal story, and things that you've learned over the years as a person operating in this logistics space?
Yeah, every career choice, that you go into will have its own set of challenges associated with it. And when I was going into aviation, that really had been my dream, and maybe one day I'll actually get back into it. But at this point, it really just seems more like a very expensive hobby to me. But when I was doing that, it's having the goals in mind to first and foremost, get your private pilot's license. And that was my first objective and my first goal. And when I accomplished that, now you kind of extend that range a little bit. Well, what am I going to do next with it? Am I going to get my instrument rating? Am I going to get my multi-engine rating? Am I going to get my certified flight instructor rating? All these different benchmarks that you can do to further progress your opportunity in the aviation industry. But when I kind of compare that to fulfillment and logistics and being in the 3PL space, it's very challenging to say you've got these incremental benchmarks, because like you said, most people start very lean, a storage unit, in our case, in our parents' basement, that the first benchmark goal was not to get into our own warehouse. That wasn't really even on our radar. It was more like, how are we going to keep this afloat? How are we going to make money shipping people's products out of a basement when we really don't know what we're doing? So the objectives and goals were not very clear. You really have to kind of figure out what your pathway is going to look like while you're in the trenches, just rolling up your sleeves, getting it done. So the first things that kind of came up while we were building that business is just understanding a good customer centric backbone. We are providing a service for our customers as a natural extension of their operations. And I think that's really what was key for us of success and growth, was partnering with our clientele, not really being treated as a vendor, but understanding their business operations and how we were an integral part of that. And then the second goal, or the second benchmark, was putting together operational procedures to make sure that you can have consistent results day after day. And once we kind of hit those two, now we have a replicatable process that can be used across multiple customers. And that's how we were able to build a foundation to grow on up until the point when we finally got our first warehouse. And that, it certainly was a pat yourself on the back moment, like, hey, we did it. We got our warehouse. We're legitimate at this point. And that's when we would start the marketing. We've got the latest and greatest technology and state of the art facilities. And, it was a wild ride, but it had to start somewhere. And that's where I'm saying, there just wasn't really a clear path in those days of how to operate and grow and build a successful 3PL, because there wasn't a lot of them around at that point. Like I said, Amazon was still a bookstore. There wasn't a lot of e-com that was happening in those days. So we were kind of trailblazers, if you will, trying to figure out how to create a good operation of a 3PL to service online direct consumer businesses.
Right. At about the same time, I was probably also in the business of I was on the 3PL side, building out operations and doing fulfillment and stuff as well. And I remember LinkedIn at the time was like the thing that I looked at every 6 months and updated with new job things, right? Or there wasn't like, I feel like as much of a community out there and like opportunities to go to happy hours and conferences that were just geared toward this. And like there just being this amount of resource out there that I think we just kind of take for granted today, of the
Yeah.
easy access to have a chat with Aaron for 30 minutes and pick his brain on something like that. All I think is not something I really knew about or leveraged at all when I was building out warehouses and standing up systems. Right. So I feel like, and there's a lot of people out in the world today that don't leverage all those resources that are out there. And so like maybe can you reflect a little bit on like how and what sort of places you've gone to over the years to educate yourself and stay aware of what's going on, and connect with others and that sort of deal?
Yeah, so a lot of it did come from industry conferences that I started going to early on in my career. And I'm based in Salt Lake City, and out here, it really is kind of the mecca of lotions, potions, juices, oils, network marketing and MLMs. That one of the big things that we were heavily involved with was nutraceutical supplements. So a lot of that was heavily pushed through affiliate marketing channels back in the day, and that's a lot of the affiliate marketing conferences, Affiliate Summit East, Affiliate Summit West. I spent a lot of time going to those. And just rubbing shoulders mostly with marketing individuals and understanding, how they were running their campaigns, their advertisements, what their plans and strategies were, and just trying to take little nuggets out of that I could apply onto our business. But beyond that, we also started attending the IWLA, the International Warehouse Logistics Association, the PCC, Postal Consumer Council, those types of things that are more catered towards people in the warehousing, in the logistics space, to just learn from your peers and what have they done? What is their business operation like? And how could I take anything of that and apply it to what we were building internally, to provide that type of feedback? Because everybody's story is different. Everybody's warehouse operates differently. But at the end of the day, the core objectives still remain the same. So it's how we go about doing that is where collaboration and sharing insights can be really beneficial to help elevate the industry as a whole.
I like it. That was spoken like a true spokesmodel for the fulfillment and logistics industry. Maybe a good segue then is, can you help me understand the background or the context of the Mr. Fulfillment sort of title that you have going on here?
So it there's a couple of ways that kind of came about, but I don't remember what book I was reading, but there was a business kind of self-help book that I was reading that was talking about the power of branding and kind of owning your brand within the niche. And it brought up an example, how if you think about UPS in the logistics industry, you immediately kind of think about Brown, and UPS even did that themselves. What can Brown do for you? That they really owned that color in the segment, and really colors don't have anything to do with logistics, but UPS did a very fantastic job of owning that. And so I was just kind of spinning my wheels thinking, okay, if I'm trying to brand myself in an industry with hundreds of, if not thousands of people competing for the same business, what can I do to kind of solidify my space within this industry? And that's where I thought, well, I'm a fulfillment guy through and through. That's who I am. So I'm just going to start going by the name Mr. Fulfillment. And it actually did start carrying over when I went to one of the business conferences. I was referred and introduced to a potential prospect. And while the conversation was coming up, it's like, oh, if you need some help, man, you got to talk to this guy. This is Mr. Fulfillment over here. Anything that has to do with picking, shipping, fulfillment, he's your guy. And so it just kind of stuck. And ever since then, I actually own the domain mrfulfillment.com. I haven't done anything with it yet, but haven't trademarked the name, but it's just been kind of the moniker I've been going by for the better part of a decade. So it was intentional, but it also just stuck by way of being introduced that way through business associates.
I like it. I like it. There is a Mr. Supply Chain, Daniel Stanton. I also know Javier Sarasura, who goes by Mr. Nearshoring. He's down in Mexico, and got Cargo Margo. You've got, there's just so many people out there that have been able to take this name and brand it for themselves. And obviously, I'm trying to go with the supply chain concept, right? So,
It's a good strategy. You got to own your piece of the market, own your niche.
yeah, I like the background story. That's really cool. So let me know whenever you launch mrfulfillment.com. I really want to see what goes on, what you do
Absolutely.
with
I'll keep
that.
you posted.
So let's fast forward a little bit and just talk a little bit about sort of the day to day of what you do now at ShipHero.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my role as the head of professional services, my primary objective has been building out our consulting division. That is something where when you're implementing a new WMS or migrating from one platform onto a new one, the nuances and the sheer amount of information and details that can be set up and configured is inundating, right? It is a time consuming process that, although we have a very robust and thorough onboarding and implementation team, it's just not feasible or realistic to go through all of the details and all of the settings within that short period of time to get our customers live and using the platform. And so we understood that there was a little bit of a gap there that needed to be bridged. But we also wanted to make sure that we were sending the right people there that had the backgrounds and experiences, like myself, from an operations perspective, to look at our customers' operations holistically. What are they doing? What type of clientele are they servicing? What is the product profiles? What size of warehouse do they have? And how could we bring our expertise and say, okay, here is really what is missing that could be done to properly roll out ShipHero and to kind of customize the configurations to work best within their operation. And so it's the consulting team has been comprised of a very robust group of general managers and warehouse operators from the ShipHero team. Myself included, one of the other acquisitions, Rob, he's been on our team. Our previous general manager of our Pennsylvania warehouse is on the team. Previous general manager of our Toronto facility has been on the team. So these guys, like we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. We've been in the trenches. We've been running these warehouse operations and teams, building out the systems and the processes throughout the entirety of the life cycle of running those warehouses. So at this point, that is one of the bigger services that we are providing, is a either on-site consulting opportunity where we can be boots on the ground to kind of help figure things out hands-on, or we can also do that by way of remote coaching and consulting through one-on-one video calls to just kind of dive into more of the high level Q&As. Are they setting up automation rules the right way? Are they using the system the way that it's intended to be to optimize their throughput? So that's kind of been one of the big pushes that I've been making on the professional services team at ShipHero.
I like it. And there was one thing you said. You said our warehouses, general manager of our warehouses and stuff. Can you connect the dots there? Are you referring to LVK or something else? And can you
Yeah,
kind of
so
expound upon that?
Yeah, it used to be ShipHero Fulfillment, but about a year and a half ago, the two departments did kind of separate, where the ShipHero Fulfillment did rebrand as LVK Fulfillment, and then ShipHero is the software side, the actual WMS. And prior to that happening, the general managers of the ShipHero warehouses were the ones that ultimately came on to my team. So yeah, good catch on that one. But it is no longer ShipHero Fulfillment. It is now LVK. But the guys that I have on my team were the previous general managers of those locations that are now working on the software side through ShipHero, through our professional services consulting team.
That's pretty cool. Can you talk, whenever that shift happened, I was not reading the news that day, I guess. So can you talk a little bit about like kind of the logic behind the rebrand there and kind of stepping away from the Ship Hero Fulfillment brand?
Yeah, well, when I guess it kind of depends on who you ask, right? And I'm not trying to put my foot in my mouth, but one of the biggest benefits that I saw when I was looking for a new WMS is that Ship Hero's platform has been built and tested through real world application in our own facilities, which are now LVK. But it's not a common occurrence where a WMS is more than just a group of engineers and developers who are writing code, but they don't generally have a real world application to test it in, right? But Ship Hero does. And that's where anytime we're rolling out a new feature, a new product release, any of these types of things, we're using ourselves essentially as the guinea pigs to make sure that, okay, is this feature working the way that it's supposed to? What are some of the unexpected results that are happening that should be debugged before we actually roll it out to the broader customer base? But when you look at kind of the industry as a whole, not only are we a fulfillment provider, but if we're also running our own 3PL, it can be misinterpreted that it's a conflict of interest, so to speak, that we are licensing our product to other 3PLs. But if we're also running our own, well, how do we provide that clarification that we are not competing with our customers, that we're not trying to do that in the industry? And even though we've certainly have rolled out non-compete agreements and anything to put those concerns at bed, it still just made sense from the broader perspective to say, okay, let's just totally separate the two entities. Let's rebrand it as its own standalone entity, so that way we can have a fine line between what Ship Hero is providing versus what the LVK team on the fulfillment side is providing.
Makes total sense. I've struggled with this a little bit myself. Of as much as I want to brand so many different services and things as Supply Chaney, it becomes a thing where I then the perception of competing with partners and stuff starts to creep in, and so
Yeah.
I think as people build businesses and you don't exactly know what you think is going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. So you're like, well, let's just do this. And it's definitely the best decision for right now. But as you go on down the path, you like, oh, well, oh, maybe this, okay, this didn't work out. This got way more successful than I thought it was going to be. um, so that's really, really cool. And I just had Maggie on this morning and got to chat with her as we talked about the upcoming AI and logistics summit that's going on in Vegas. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about y'all's, and I've just seen y'all popping up on the map this year, like kind of with user conferences. And, a moment ago, we talked about how you would go to conferences to go engage and stuff with folks and connect. And now Ship Hero is kind of doing that of your own. Can you just kind of talk about that effort and right there?
Yeah, so it is one of those things where we have really been pushing to establish ourselves as a source of authority in this industry. We easily are, one of the top rated WMSs when it comes to the direct consumer e-commerce systems and platforms that a lot of warehouses will use. And we have been investing a lot of time, money, and resources into building out the wholesale portion, the B2B side of this business, to provide a more holistic platform for multi-node, multi-warehouse, and multi-channel fulfillment companies. And a lot of what we've seen that has been missing is that sense of camaraderie that we were talking about, being able to share information amongst industry peers, that not a lot of people have been creating platforms or in-person events to really share what is happening within the industry. Things even happening from a political standpoint with the tariffs that are happening that affects everybody in supply chain and logistics. There's really not a lot of forums and businesses that are leading the way and saying we are going to be a source of truth, knowledge, and authority when it comes to these subjects and these topics. And so ShipHero is just trying to fill that need. So just earlier this year, we hosted our Insider Summit out in New York with a room full of 3PL owners, CEOs, and it really was like behind the curtain information that normally you would not expect people to be sharing this level of detail and personal information when it comes to their businesses. But it really kind of proved the point that people are willing to collaborate and share and listen, so long as it is that group of peers. And we know that this information is not going to be widely and publicly broadcast to other people outside of that space. It kind of creates that safe haven, if you will, for people to really become vulnerable and talk about their biggest challenges, their biggest concerns, and what are other people doing to solve these issues. Because chances are an issue that you and I are running into, somebody else has probably already dealt with it and probably figured out a solution of how to overcome that. But it really is almost like taboo, right? Like, how am I supposed to talk to somebody about this when I'm trying to promote that I'm a successful business owner, I'm a successful 3PL. How could I possibly need anybody else's help or insight on these things? So when you get these people together in the same room and say, hey, this is a safe space where we can be honest and truthful with each other, and it is going to be hosted and presented by ShipHero, I think really that's what we are trying to do within the space, is just provide more of those engaging opportunities for business owners, CEOs to share that information, share their success stories, their challenges, and really build that sense of camaraderie in the industry that we feel has been missing.
I think the concept there of the safe space, the technical word is like Chatham House rules or something like that
I
is the
think so.
real wording. I'm just learning this concept myself also because I'm starting to see that more and more of these summits and forums and that sort of stuff seem to be popping up. It seems like the barriers to entry of having your own events are reducing. You got cvent.com and you got the ability to blast out and invite 50 to 100 people and put together some sessions. And it seems like just the concept of trade shows and conferences and these sorts of things is democratizing in a way so that smaller and smaller groups and more specialized groups of people are getting together to talk shop. And so speaking of which, we've got the Vegas show coming up. Can you talk a little about what y'all's plans are, what the agenda will be like there in Vegas in September?
Absolutely. We are very excited about that one. So it is September 16th and 17th at our Las Vegas warehouse, where the theme of it is AI in logistics. So that is one of the newest features that we have rolled out at ShipHero is AI picking. And just from a operational standpoint, somebody who comes from an operations background, there's always that, AI buzzword, but what does it actually mean? What difference does it make to your business, to your operation? How can you harness that? And that's really what this summit is intended to do, is answer a lot of those questions. Is how is AI kind of shaping the forefront of logistics and operations into the future? What have we at ShipHero done to implement that and roll it out within our own platform? And what do we really see is going to be next, and what other partners and providers from a shipping perspective, a packaging perspective, or anything really that is logistics related, how can AI be a beneficial tool to help carry warehouses forward into 2026 and beyond?
There was something that I heard about, and I don't know if this is your area of expertise, but this word of vibe coding on stage. Do you know what that means, or should we get someone like an IT degree, a computer scientist person?
Well, my understanding of vibe coding is basically just using AI chatbots to write code for you in the moment. Where, normally somebody like me who doesn't know a thing about coding could go to a chatbot, Claude, for example, and just write in a prompt. This is what I would love for an application to do, and it can immediately spit out the code for you to be able to have a resourceful tool. So that's my understanding of what vibe coding is just kind of getting into the zone and using AI to build a tool or build a product that can be used outside of the standard environment of ShipHero database as an example. We do have a whole team of engineers and developers, but what if we just need this little piece of something that normally would take a long time for the internal devs to be able to roll that out? Well, maybe we can just vibe code that and get something to work as a band-aid, for the time being.
That's
But don't
that
take
seems
my
pretty
word
cool.
for it.
I will be there. I'll be there to see it. I'm pretty excited about it. As we're kind of wrapping things up real quick, is there anything that we haven't covered? Any topics that we've left on the table here you want to try to dig into real quick before we adjourn for this episode?
I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job covering all the basics. I'm kind of glad that you dove into the background and the history, because that really does help kind of pave the way and understand, where people have came from, how their journey has brought them to where they are, and really what the future is going to look like. That I really think there is going to be a change of the tides here in the near future, where you mentioned yourself, the barrier to entry of operating and starting up a 3PL are generally pretty low. But there used to be this understanding in the industry a few years back that there's plenty of business to go around. Let's not worry about that too much. But I don't know if that's going to be the case going into the future. That I really think it is going to come down to consolidations that are going to be happening, acquisitions within the space. And really, those that are going to succeed are going to be the ones that are customer centric, have a very good sense of who their customers are, as well as a very good base operational guide to help sustain their operations using the right platforms and tools to provide reliable and stable source of operations. So it will be interesting to see what happens and which companies are able to leverage AI to their benefit to kind of disrupt the industry. And I'm here for it. I'm excited to see what's going to happen next. And if you are looking to find out more, then absolutely reach out to us and see if we can get you a seat at that AI and logistics event in September. I think it'll be a great one for people to come and attend.
So, hey, Randall, thanks for coming on and spending a little bit of time and sharing your background and how you were one of those garage/basement fulfillment startups. So, you really truly speak the language and sharing some of your experience and expertise with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity.